Welcome to Solfreggio tunings for open string guitar. This week on Raiders of the Lost Ark, we're going to tackle how I go about this, what I do, what is my process, what may be the benefits, and how you might go about doing it yourself. So let's get started. Welcome back to episode 6 of Raiders of the Lost Art. This is a series dedicated to innovation in sound, music, the art of active listening and high-depth audio. And, you know, we've covered a couple of really interesting topics so far. Changing colors into rhythmic patterns, Morse code to music, sounds of the planets, magnetic frequencies, all this sort of stuff. And the reason why this is so weird and so crazy is about what we're trying to do here is to inspire artists, musicians, and listeners to go deeper, to explore new territory. And look, today's no real exception. Today we're going to be talking about Solfreggio Frequencies for guitar and for composition, and we're sort of going to go through a bunch of different stuff. Got a very complex setup here. I've got my studio, I've got multiple cameras, guitars, feedback, channels going all over the place. So hopefully it's all going to work out. I recorded a few bits and pieces this morning, like that intro screen, and we'll go through it, and hopefully it will make sense. I talk a little bit fast. I know, it's me, it's who I am. I'm Australian and I'm crazy. But beside that, you know, you can always ask questions. Hey, Greg, thank you. Greg's jumped on, Greg Howard, a true legend of touch style. But yeah, so we're going to go into some of this stuff. But first off, I'm going to bring in the incredible John Pashotta. So let me get John into the mix here. John, are you here? Yes, there you are.
I'm here.
Are you there? How are you, buddy?
How's it going, Finn?
Good. How are you, mate?
I'm wonderful.
Good. So let's talk about Solfreggio frequencies. I wanted to just start this by saying, first off, I am not a scientist in relation to this. I'm not a mathematician. I am purely someone who's curious. And so if we start looking around at what, you know, some of the stuff around Solfreggio frequencies, there's people that debunk it and people that are for it. But let's just get into the way I look at things, right? So there's a bunch of research online, and we'll jump into that in a minute, and I'll show you some good links. But music tuning is based on a temperament system. And so equal temperament is a tuning system that was ratified whereby instruments can play in tune with each other. And that's why guitars have frets. So 12 notes in a scale divided up into equal temperaments give you equal temperament tuning. Before that came in, that was the early 20th century, there was a lot of other tuning systems invented, and they were tuned all sorts of different concepts. But a lot of it was tuned around how the sound resonated with the human physiology. So we have a makeup of, we talked last week about chronobiology, the different clocks in the body system. If you look at a sine wave is a frequency, and the speed of the frequency is the pitch of the sine wave. And so that's energy, okay? And so the way I looked at this was, you know, in the early days, people would tune till it resonated with the human physiology, till it sounded good, till it felt good. And instruments didn't need to be in tune as much. Classical instruments did, but they didn't have frets. So it goes on and on and on. Anyway, when this tuning system was ratified, instruments could now play in tune, and that's great. Looking back at some of these ancient tuning systems, however, there are some theories around how these tuning systems not only sounded good, but how they affected the human physiology. Did it help heal us? Did it help, you know, regenerate our nervous system? Let me promise you, by doing this, by tuning your guitar to open tunings and Solfreggio frequencies, I guarantee you, I can't guarantee you, but I'm pretty sure you won't be healing anyone. Okay, so the whole purpose of this is not to go, I watch Finn stream and now I can heal people. It's not, it's got nothing to do with that. Yeah, exactly. So if you're out in circus tents around the Midwest with all these people coming in and you're selling Solfreggio Frequencies, it's not my fault, okay? The purpose of this is to be curious, to look between the cracks, to try and, typically when you have two arguments on either side that are very ferocious arguments on something, there's typically something there that is a crack that you might be able to sort of innovate. And so the purpose of this today is to try and see, yeah, go John.
What are those arguments?
So the arguments are from a mathematical equation. There is no evidence that these frequencies actually do the intended result that they're saying. So for example, if we say 417 hertz, which is scale 2 on a 6-note solfeggio scale, is about undoing situations and facilitating change. Well, scientists find that hard to measure, because how do you measure facilitating change? And then they ask, what is the baseline measurement criteria that actually was set up for that? So it sets up this argument where it's pretty much doomed to fail from the get-go, because scientists have a process methodology of being able to validate things, and they can't validate that. So therefore it doesn't exist. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is just to go take you to a website to give you an understanding of some of the different viewpoints out here. But this is a really great resource. There's a lot of great resources that you could look up, but this one in particular is, I find, really good. Even though it's biased towards one viewpoint, there's a lot of great information in here. So this is rollhollander.eu, which is roelhollander.eu. Now, whilst he purports to stick on the viewpoint that the whole Solfreggio thing is completely a farce, there is, again, whichever viewpoint you come from, that's not my viewpoint on here and not the intention. But there's a lot of great information in here about these frequencies, where they came from, the history of them, the mathematics, the different blah, blah, blah. So, you know, take your own journey through the web if you're interested. There's a lot of stuff in here. There's no point me carrying on and going on about it. As I say, what I look for is the creative aspect of, you know, can we use the resonance in these frequencies as a new idea to create a new baseline for tuning. So I'll leave that with you and we'll carry on. What if we tuned to one of these frequencies? What would it do? Now, from a guitar player or a stringed instrument, because guitars have frets and stringed instruments, a lot of them have frets, the problem is those frets represent equal temperament tuning. So the best results I've found is when we tune an instrument to an open tuning. Therefore, we have a lot of sympathetic resonance on open strings, okay? So to do that, what I've done is earlier this morning, I got up and I've just done a little video of me sitting here explaining how to tune to the tuning that we're going to use today, which is a D sus4 or a DAD-GAD tuning, okay? So let's get into it. So this is a normal E tuning, normal standard tuning that I've just tuned it up with the tuner. Now, that's all great and well, but let's get back into this whole concept of getting into an open tuning. So to do that, what I'm going to do is, even though I know that I'm in concert now, I've tuned up with a guitar tuner. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to, for the sake of this purpose of this exercise, is I'm going to go to a standard DAD-GAD tuning. So E, two of them the same. A is the same. Okay, so we're in a standard DAD-GAD tuning now. Now, that is in concert pitch. So we're in a normal concert pitch tuning now. So let's go back to Logic and let's then explore what that looks like when we put it into our Solfreggio tuning. Okay, we're now in Logic and this is basically an empty session, and I'm going to show you the process that I use to set this up from the get-go. And obviously, if you have a different DAW or a different piece of software, you can use whatever you want. I'm just going to explain Logic just because that's what I have handy. But for all intensive purposes, the process should be pretty much the same. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a track. And in this track, let's just go audio track here. In this track, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a test oscillator. Okay, I'll just mute that for the moment. So this is the process of getting our tuning reference. So if what I've got over here in the notepad of Logic, I've actually set up the different frequencies. It might be hard for you to see it on the stream, but I have a bunch of different frequencies which I've set up in the notepad. So 174, 285 Hertz, 396 Hertz, 417. So if we said, let's take 285 Hertz, for example, what I would do in my test oscillator is I would type in 285 Hertz, okay, and then turn it on. Okay, can you guys hear that?
Can sense it. Yep.
You hear that? Okay, so what I have now is I have that 285 Hertz coming through the system. Now, with that frequency, what I've done here is then what I'll do is I'll put a tuner on that. So if I go into these little setups here and I'll put a guitar tuner on it, and measure what that's doing, you'll see it's C sharp with 48 cents. Okay, so it's not sitting off your normal tuning, it's actually up by 48 cents on C sharp. So what I've done here to make things easy is I've actually set up, let me just mute that and unhide these. What you might see now on the stream is a bunch of tracks. I'll just move this over so you can see it. And what I've done is I've actually gone and created, just like those TV commercials with the turkey oven, I've gone and created a whole bunch of these frequencies here. So I've got 174 Hertz, 285 Hertz, 396 Hertz, 417, 528, 639, 741, 963. And so what I'll do is I'll just bring them off, see if you can hear that. You hear that? Is that, John, is everyone hearing that?
A little more. I can. Yep.
Okay. So these are combined frequencies. Okay. Now, if we, again, I'll just mute these, but I'll bring up the test oscillators and the, each one of them has a test oscillator and a tuner set off each track. Okay, and if I just go to each track, you'll see what's going on here.
Each is off.
So G is off by 18 cents, C sharp is off by 48 cents. Let me just open this one up. And that's G sharp at 7 cents. And so what ends up happening is the Solfeggio frequencies in its own scale are very, very hard to play against because the temperament between the notes is off. So it sounds, if you tried to play them together with all the other notes in the musical scale, and I'll explain this later and I'll show you this in Logic how that works. It actually collides with itself. But this is where using one of these bass references, if we, for instance, wanted to say, look, we want to use a bass reference of, say, 285 Hertz, which is about healing tissues and organs, is what the spiritual sort of designation for that frequency is. Then what we would do is, and we looked at 285 Hertz, which is over here, and the tuning of that is C sharp at 48 cents. Then we know if we're tuned to a DADGAD tuning, D, A, D, G, A, D, the 3 D notes in the tones on the drones of that DADGAD open string tuning are going to be a great bass reference for us to set up the bass tuning of that open tuning guitar system to this. So instead of DADGAD or D, A, D, G, A, D, it will be C sharp, G sharp, C sharp, if that makes sense, but all of it sort of pitched towards that 48 cents. And so whilst that sounds like a lot of work, it's actually interesting because when we go through, and if you, after this stream, when you go back and listen to it and you listen to the guitar part pre and post, you'll hear a difference, even though it sounds like it's in tune with itself. For me personally, these frequencies are a really interesting way to open up an instrument. I have a cedar top on that Breedlove that with Hawaiian koa back and sides. It's got a beautiful projection. I just had it through the pickup before, but acoustically it just sounds unbelievable. So anyway, does that sort of make sense in terms of what I've done? So the way I've set up the door is I said, I'm going to take each note of the musical scale. Each note is going to have a test oscillator, and that test oscillator is going to produce a frequency. I'm going to pick one of those frequencies, and then I'm going to tune my guitar to it. Okay, so I put here's another little one I just did just before of retuning logic in this session here. So let's go into. Okay, so now recapping what we've got here is we've got the different Solfreggio frequencies set up as tracks in logic. We've actually set up test oscillators on the right frequencies based on the Solfeggio notes or the Solfeggio scale. We've actually mapped and understand via tuners where you can actually see the offsets that each one of these notes is giving us and how many scale degrees that gives us from a 440 pitch. And so what we want to do now, the goal now is to take guitar from a standard E tuning into a tuning which is an open tuning, but an open tuning based on one of these Solfreggio frequencies. So for this intended purpose, I'm going to actually pick the actual frequency 285 Hertz. 285 Hertz being the second degree or the second note of the 9-note Solfeggio scale, or the lowest note in the 6-note scale. So 285 Hertz is said to be mapped to tissue repair, energy repair, that sort of thing. So we're going to use that as the baseline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get the pitch going in logic, and then what you're going to hear me do is actually tuning the guitar. So what I've done is I've got my little headphones on because it's quite a complex little setup here. And so what you're going to see me try and do is pick this frequency, have it play back via the test oscillator, and then tune the guitar. Now I'm going to be tuning the E, D, and E strings to this frequency, and then I'm going to be tuning the rest of the actual strings to the same intervals as the DAD-GAD tuning or the D-sus tuning. Okay, so let's give it a shot. Let's switch on this frequency. Okay, I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to actually tune the guitar. There's my E. Okay, so let's get it going. Sounds pretty.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the process that I use in terms of getting the tuning. Now, it can get really sort of technical because you're talking about note frequencies and this and that and the other. The very first thing you need to do is to figure out what open tuning you want. If I pick a higher one, 639 or G sharp, I'll often use a capo on the guitar and I'll bring it up, and it's incredible. You go 5 or 6 frets up the neck on a capo, and you pick a G sharp and you start using an open tuning on that. It just starts for me, it comes alive, and it's why not give it a shot? If these frequencies are intended to create this type of result, why just be happy with A440? And this is that purpose. And the track that I'll play at the end, which is off my album, the very last track, is actually tuned exactly this way. For me, it's an interesting sort of concept. John, you got any questions on what we're talking about here?
On the tuner, I mean, are you basically taking the the frequency, tone frequency, and are you pulling it back in tune? Like, is that tuner activated to where it's correcting the tuning?
No. So what we're doing is we're forcing the tuner to be out of tune.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
instead of us going, here's a guitar tuner, I'm going to tune to that. We're asking the question, what if we retune the guitar tuner? And we retune the guitar tuner so its bass reference is now one of the Solfeggio frequencies. So
Yeah. Okay.
and as you know, John, one of the things that I'm passionate about and exploring with my friends here is to go, 9 times out of 10, these experiments don't work. But there are learnings that come from them.
Yeah.
And so for me, this is one of these great things that what you're seeing in a very short, concise bit of time, which may or may not make sense, actually took a fair bit of working out of me going, well, does this work? And how do I put the capo here? And what open tunings work over here? So I'm bundling it down to a very short synopsis of a process that for me works, and I used on the code on my new album. So
That's what I love about how you approach music. You approach it as an explorer. You're like, who's the Spanish, explorer, you just go out and try things and land on his feet. Sometimes, that other 80% of the time where you just, don't. But I mean, I think that's inspiring to me as your partner. It's like you find stuff that other people, would just kind of go with the tab and kind of go with standard operating procedure. You kind of you force yourself in new places. And I think that comes out in the finished product of the music. It's like,
yeah, well, for me, there was a saying that I heard when I was a kid, and it was from a guy called Arthur Schopenhauer, and I think he did the quote in 1877, and the quote goes something along the lines of this. It says, talent hits a target that no one else can hit. Genius hits a target that no one else can see. And it always stuck with me going, what does that mean? It stuck with me for ages going, people go, oh, that's got a lot of talent. You're so talented at this. And it was like, but what does hitting a target that no one else can see mean? And you start to look at these fundamental innovations in the world, from electric light to electricity to, now I'm not trying to say that Solfreggio tuning has got anything to do with that, but it's the process of how do you get to that destination? It's that process of being curious and exploring. Yeah. And I found myself as a musician, I spent a lot of years getting very, very technical with my playing and very, very good with my playing. And then
you could hit the target any day of the week. Like you're finding something that's original to you.
Correct. Well, for me, I got bored. I just found, I'd pick up a guitar and I go, yeah, okay. I'm not as inspired as I used to be with this because the challenge is sort of over. And look, I'm not saying everyone's like that. But what I do say is that for those people that are at that point, I think this is for you, because if you're happy with what you've got and you're going out and you're making your money and you're doing whatever you want to do with your music, that's great. But if you're in a rut and if you're looking for something, this is the whole idea here is to people. A lot of people think I'm insane doing this sort of stuff, but I don't care because it's just what I like. And, I would hope that there are other people on that journey. Look, we're nearly at 1,000 followers in the last couple of weeks since we started this series. So people are watching it, and obviously it's resonating with some people. So, I personally would love to hear from musicians who are trying new things. Actually, you know what? I would like to get them on the show. We're now starting to look at how we can, who we can interview. I've got some good people coming up. So people that are, sound designers, people that are using great instruments in new and unique ways. For me, that's interesting. And that actually fuels my passion.
It would be great to get comments on people who guests who we should put on the show. So if you have people in your universe, post them down here.
Give an example. So on our chat right now, we've got Greg Howard. He's one of the world's best touch style players. You've got guys like that have spent their whole life forging, innovative playing styles and stuff like that. That's interesting to me. And it's these new styles and new approaches to playing. You fall into new ideas just because, like, like obviously I'm taken with the war guitar, but it helps me. I come up with things that I could never play on the guitar just because of the ordered sequence of things.
Right. And Finn, we in the hacking music training that we do, we have a group that we go through, force multipliers, and this is what you're doing is a force multiplier. You know, you're limiting your and you're pushing yourself in a direction that others wouldn't realize.
Yeah, well, look, guys, look, this is what I love about working with you, John, and Jetpack. There's not very many people that are willing to entertain things that are different. But personally, I think that's where the greatest opportunity lies. It's not doing the same, So.
Yeah, no, that's your vision, your place. Like everything is not for everybody.
Yeah.
What you're doing is for you and the audience, and how we see ourselves is kind of connecting that bond with the audience, strengthening that bond.
Yeah. Well, it's not just about me too. The viewers on this stream that watch this, it's often you get told that you're an idiot or that's stupid or you don't know what you're talking about because someone's an expert who tells you that this has got to be this way. And what's interesting to me about these Solfreggio frequencies are you'll read online and you'll read something from a mathematician who has gone out of his way to prove that these things don't work. And then you go on another side and you read something from a spiritual person who goes out of their way to prove that they do work. And either way is good.
I mean, just listening to the dad tuning, even if you're not a scientist, not a musician, you're just a layman. It's like you can't help but tune into that immersive warm blanket of dad tuning as a 100%, listener.
100%.
It's like, oh my goodness, that is what space did I just walk into? Dad has a thing.
Yeah, and look, Dad is one tuning. I've got, that's a standard one. I've got ridiculous, crazy tunings where one of the songs I've swapped the strings around on the guitar, so they're in a different sequence or order of sequences, and it forces you into this different mindset. But people would say, "Why are you doing that? That is completely mad." And I would say, "Well, why wouldn't you do that? You just say you do that because that's what you know. But by putting the strings in a different order, I played a track and people went, how the hell did you play that? And it was actually really simple. It was just that the way the string order helped me get that. So I created a voice. And, it's interesting listening to Les Paul. When I joined the board of the Les Paul Foundation in New York, some of the stories about the way Les was and, even Leo Fender and some of these great heroes, just very inspiring hearing that sort of stuff for me, and I just love to be a champion to let people know it's okay to be weird. It's actually often where the gold is, so don't be scared of exploring.
Standardized testing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's an education system. Everything is kind of blocked off and digestible and standardized. You just run these things and you don't get outside the box. And, I think that mode of learning is 100 years old. That everybody learns at the same thing, and tests accordingly. It's like what you're doing is you're throwing that standardized testing out and you're saying, look, I'm just going to learn. I'm just going to be curious and I'm going to create.
Yeah.
And some people like it, some people don't get it. That's great. Everything's not for everybody, but for you, your audience, that's what you're finding.
Well, you bring up school. Like a lot of the viewers might not even know this, but I do a lot of consulting to some of Australia's largest companies around transformation, innovation, different thinking systems from design, critical and lateral thinking, all this sort of technical stuff. But at the end of the day, I've got another whole career, which is just helping people learn how to think differently and being able to see things that they can't see in business, in process, in systems. And so I believe, my personal belief is the world is changing faster than it ever has in the history of the world. And 1,000%. Yet we're still teaching things in this thing called a school, whereby all of that information is available online. But the system is designed to make everyone accommodate to one set of principles, which are probably irrelevant these days. And so the rise of emotional intelligence, creative thinking, lateral thinking, these are skills that are going to help AI not take those jobs. It will be something that it has AI working for that type of mindset to be able to join disparate patterns. And
Those are essential.
this is just one process.
Yeah, those are essential skills. Project management,
Yep.
team collaboration. It's like, all our artists are scattered all over the world.
Yep.
And it's like, do we need to be in Nashville in an office? I mean, we can create across continents.
Well, I'm in Australia, you're in Nashville. We got sales all over the world. It's a
different world. And I think most of the people haven't gotten the notice yet. Still kind of operating from that standardized learning perspective of this is what a record company should be. This is what music should be. And
what's fascinating to me, John, is that there's a big buzz around the world on this resilience, and pivoting, all these buzzwords. And what I find fascinating is everyone who's watching this that is a musician has become a musician through resilience, right? You don't just play a G chord and get it wrong and then go, that's it, I'm giving up guitar. That's it. Yeah. So it's over. It's too hard, right? Whereas a lot people are going, oh, it's a great skill to have. It's like, well, if it's a great skill to have, learn an instrument, because you don't have this, oh, that didn't work, so I failed and I'm not going to do stuff now. It's like, it blows my mind.
It's continuous learning.
Yeah.
100%.
So these experiments, at least the way I think, and look, I'm really grateful for all of my subscribers and the people tuning into this, because, it's that, I get ideas from you just as you get ideas from me. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this process. So I'll just recap what we talked about. We took an idea from a bunch of Solfreggio frequencies. I chose one today, which is 285 hertz. We got a guitar, we put into an open tuning, which has this sympathetic, a lot of open strings which resonate with the sound. We then retuned the bass line of the most common 3 strings to 285 hertz. Then we retuned the rest of the strings in a dadgad style intervals, but to that 285 hertz tuning. So basically we tuned open tuning to 285 hertz.
Yeah.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how we then bring that tuned guitar or that tuned piece back into a piece of software to then compose around that. Because if you bring that retuned instrument into play along with synths and program and all this stuff that you've got in your DAW, it's all going to be out, right? Mm-hmm. So because your guitar has been, you've forced it into a different tuning system. So it's then, how do you retune your DAW to be the tuning of your new tuned guitar? Does that sort of make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah. You're tuning your DAW, your new tuning system.
Correct. That's right. Exactly. So I think I created something here. Let me just go into this and then I'll bring up Logic and
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Let me just quickly go back to that. In Logic, we go to project settings, then we go to tuning, and this page comes up. Now, what I was basically saying before is the point now is how do we bring guitar into a system where you've retuned the guitar? How do you retune your DAW to your guitar? Yep. So equal tempered is the first radio button in Logic. I'm sure it'll be different in the other DAWs, but it'll be a similar thing. Then underneath that, you have a button called fixed. And these are all different types of tuning systems that exist, at least in Logic. And what I was saying before is, for me, as someone who's very curious, I would say, why? What are all these? Going through quarter mean tone. Mean tone tuning is the temperament from one note to the next rather than over 12 octaves. The Kepler tuning system, which is from a book written in 1619 around the planetary systems. So there's all of these really interesting attempts at tuning, which was then ratified by a standards body in the early 20th century, to equal temperament, which is what we have today. But look, in this case, what we want to do is we want to go to a user-based system. And this user-based system now is the third button down here. It allows me to input into each single note of the musical scale an offset. Okay? So what we need to do is we need to calculate the offsets. So for example, G is plus 18, and we know that because on my oscillator, I set up the Solfreggio frequency of 396 hertz. Then I put a tuner underneath just to recap. And the tuner said I'm 18 cents positive, right? Then what I do is I go to my note G in Logic and I type in 18. Okay, and so what I do is for each one of these notes of the Solfeggio scale that I want to use, I could do it from a Solfeggio scale, or what I do is from the guitar. Now, from a guitar, it's a little bit different. The process, what I have to do is I have to record each note of my guitar back into the DAW. And so that's what I've done here. Let me just solo that. So this is the guitar that I've recorded back into Logic. Okay, let me just make sure this is working. Can you guys hear that? Okay, so that is my retuned guitar that I've recorded back in chromatically over 1 octave back into Logic. Okay, I've obviously cut it up so there's no delays over each beat. But anyway, so there's my notes. Then what I do is I actually put a tuner on this, on this particular track that I've soloed. Now what you're looking at over here, just above my head, is the different offsets. So if I play the first note, that's 2 cents. So what I would do is I'd add +2 on here. The next note, what did I have? I had it -3. -1, plus -13. So what you would do is you would then adjust these values to the values of your tuner, and then you would have a custom scale that all the synths will now, all your individual stuff inside your DAW will be tuned to your newly retuned guitar. Okay guys, thanks so much for tuning in. This is the, okay, well, that's it. We're actually at the end of another episode. Well, it's that time again. We're at the end of another episode. I hope this episode has given you some ideas, got some creative juices flowing, got you into sort of looking at some of these frequencies and how you might apply it. Really appreciate everyone tuning in. Okay, well, that's it. We've come to the end of yet another episode. Thanks so much for tuning in and getting this far. Really enjoying putting these sort of bizarre, sort of interesting well, that's it, guys. Well, that's it. We're at the end of another episode. I really, really appreciate you guys hanging in there and going through these concepts with me. I really hope you get some inspiration from these episodes and take them into your own playing, your own adventures. I really want to thank everyone for subscribing on my YouTube channel, where, as I mentioned, I think before, we're nearly up to 1,000 people now, and just want to keep the community growing. Future episodes coming up, share some ideas. Anyone you want me to interview, any topics you want me to talk about, please just DM me on my Facebook and I'll get back to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close off this episode with a track off my new album. It's actually the last track off my album. This track is using this whole concept as a bass line for itself. So let me play that for you, and I look forward to seeing you on episode 7 next week. Ciao.